just wanted to share with you guys that because I know we're the one community in the Lord. So please pray for me and for my wife. Thank you. Stand firm and hold on tight. When did you last hear those words? Last time I heard those words were probably when I was riding on a scenic ferry at Niagara Falls. I'm sure most of you had the experience of going on a ferry to view the fall closer, but if you haven't, the movement of the ferry gets wild as it approaches near the fall. I personally found it hard to stand without holding onto something, so I ended up grabbing the rail just to stabilize myself. But I think us Asians, especially Koreans, have disadvantages in those situations because we're usually obsessed with taking photos everywhere we go, right? Even though I'm not a huge fan of taking photos, I couldn't help but to take a few videos because I was astonished by the sheer size of the fall, especially the horseshoe one, the Canadian fall, right? It was just amazing. So I kind of wanted to send the video to my parents in New Zealand. So as you can imagine, I was wearing that, the poncho, the raincoat thingy. I was holding onto the rail with one hand, and I was holding onto my phone with my other hand. And I was like trying to take it, while the ship was like shaking crazy. Of course, there were too many water particles flying around, so whatever I recorded didn't look nice because it's crazy. But my parents, still enjoyed the video that I sent them because they could at least remotely experience its overwhelming presence. Anyways, so at a time of movement and danger, or a time when something is about to happen, which might cause injury or even death, we instinctively plant both feet as solidly as we can, and we grab something very tightly just to prevent from injury, getting hurt. So, and I'm sure many of you here have done that to prevent from whatever injuries you might, potentially have. You might have held tight on the bar while riding something in Canada's Wonderland, right? You might have held tight on boulders while rock climbing or bouldering, or you might have planted your feet on the ground while playing volleyball, right? Especially when someone on the other side was about to spike the ball towards you. Whatever it is, when we are exposed to a dangerous situation, our survival instinct kicks right in, and we usually stand firm and hold on to something very tight. I go to the gym every now and then. Actually, I go to the gym 3 days a week, and whenever I can lift the heavy weight, I grab onto something tight so that I don't fall. So we do that instinctively. Now, that is the precise picture with there we go. That is the precise picture of what the church in Thessalonica was going through at the time Paul wrote the letter of 2 Thessalonians. The church was very young, okay? And they were in a very, very, turbulent situation, very tough situation. And just like how young people are not very good at handling difficulties, the church in Thessalonica was also having trouble with, resolving the issues that they were facing at that time. It looked kind of like a, small boat, young little boat, trying to cross a very turbulent waterway, right? The little church was being tossed to and fro. Now, looking back, I think I kind of understand how they would have felt, the people in the Thessalonian church. When we were in the pandemic, right, everyone was going crazy. And as a pastor, I was also going crazy. I was so concerned with the uncertain future which lied ahead of us, ahead of our high C especially. We were not allowed to worship together in person, and the online worship attendance was only 50 or 40 some days. And it was diminishing week after week. It was crazy. So I was worried about the future of our high C, and the fact that I couldn't do anything to make the situation better, made me to feel very vulnerable. I was like, what can I even do, to fix this situation? And the only thing that I could do as a pastor was what? Was to stand firm and hold tight onto Jesus. That's the only thing that I could do as a pastor. The problem seemed way too big for me to handle, and it was definitely too much for me to bear. And I believe you and your parents all had a similar experience for a few years of not knowing what to do next. And this was the kind of situation that the church of Thessalonica was going through at that time. They were unsure of what to do next because the time was very turbulent. They were being tossed around here and there because of the problems that they were facing, because of the persecution, because of all those disbeliefs and false teachings and whatnot. Then what were some of the problems they were going through? What made it so difficult for them to keep their faith? Well, the answer to that question can be found in verses 1 and 2 of today's passage. I don't know why it keeps going off, but thank you. Let me read it to you. Concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered to him, we ask you, brothers and sisters, not to become easily unsettled or alarmed by the teaching allegedly from us, whether by a prophecy or by word of mouth or by letter, asserting that the day of the Lord has already come. Kind of hard to understand just by reading those verses, right? Let me explain that to you. The problem they were facing was very simple. The problem was that their faith was shaken by the false teachings, the fake teachings, right? And the false teaching was mainly about the end day, the day of the Lord, the apocalypse. You guys heard that word before, right? Zombie apocalypse, the end day, where everything finishes, where everything goes haywire in the world. The end day. So they were being confused about the false teaching which penetrated into their community, saying that the end day has already come. So what do you have to do? Do nothing. That's what the false teachers were telling these Thessalonian Christians. And they were being confused because what they initially heard from Paul was a different story. So they were very confused. They were like a little boat, trying to navigate through whether this is true or whether that is false, right? So these false teachers, they attracted people by pretending that they know the hidden answer about the last day. So in the church of Thessalonica, some false teachers came and they started to teach something that was against what Paul was teaching at the time. I don't know if you have heard about these things before, but as I was growing up, I saw a number of random weird preachers who claimed that they figured out the exact date of the end day when Jesus is going to come back and we're all going to be like kumbaya and everything will be all good. I heard those preachers when I was growing up. I'm pretty sure Nuri heard about them before, right? Yeah, but I'm not sure about you guys, but growing up, those kind of things were on news as we were young. So that kind of thing was happening back in the church in Thessalonica. They said the end day has already arrived, therefore they just needed to chill and just do nothing until Jesus returns. So what was the result of that? As a result, some people ended up not doing anything, ended up not caring about anything. And they were causing a lot of social trouble among the church and among the community, right? They were messing around. So they thought Jesus would return very soon, so they believed that there was no point for them to work or even strive towards anything. And just like how some teenagers say, Oh, I stopped caring about school. I stopped caring about grades. I know you're joking, right? But, some people are not. But I hope you are not. No, I hope you are, right? Some of the Thessalonian Christians actually stopped caring about their lives. Whatever happens, happens. I don't care anymore because Jesus is going to come anyways. And this life that I live, it's going to end eventually, right? And when Paul heard about these lazy, reckless people of the Thessalonian church, he was very much concerned. He was worried sick, just like how much I was worried about the whole pandemic situation. He was so worried. What do I do with these people, these lazy bums? What do I do? So he goes on to say something to fix their wrong beliefs. And this is what he says in verse 3. Let me read it to you. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. So what is Paul saying here? He's actually saying that the end day hasn't come yet. So he's just going, hey folks, don't believe in those false teachings. The end day has not yet come. So there are other events which needs to take place before the end day arrives, and because those things have not yet happened in our lives, Paul is actually telling the Thessalonian Christians to stand firm and hold on tight. Then what is that prior event which must take place before Jesus arrives? Well, according to this verse here, it's the appearance of the man of lawlessness. So Paul is saying that unless the man of lawlessness appears in front of us, the end day will not come. There are certain things that needs to take place before Jesus returns. So he's giving prophecies after prophecies here. So he foresaw the imminent persecution coming towards the Christians, and he wanted to warn, be careful, Thessalonians. He wanted to warn the Christians to brace themselves, prepare themselves for what's coming. Then who's the man of lawlessness, guys? Emperor Gaius Caligula? Would that be the one? So when Paul was using this term, man of lawlessness, he probably was thinking about the Roman emperor whose name is Gaius Caligula. If you're interested in ancient Roman history, I don't know if any of you would, you might have heard his name before if you're interested. Just like the famous Emperor Nero. You guys know Nero, right? Yeah, Nero. This guy was also pretty reckless and brutal. Back in the days, emperors actually believed that they were gods. The Roman emperors especially, they thought they were gods. So they were so full of themselves to the point they actually believed they were the divine beings who could do anything that they wanted. So this guy, Caligula, went around and he killed people for fun. It's psh, right? So even worse than that is he enjoyed sleeping with women who were already married, and he liked watching their husbands suffer. That's crazy, right? And one time, he got really bored, right? He got really bored while watching a show in an amphitheater, the Colosseum, Roman Colosseum, those kind of amphitheater. So he ordered the entire section of the audience, the citizens of the Rome, to be thrown out onto the stage just to be eaten alive by wild animals. That's how crazy he is. And that's not all. He hated Jewish people so much, so he ordered the soldiers to, create his statue right in the middle of the temple in Jerusalem. You have no idea how serious offense that is towards the Jewish people. To erect a statue right in the middle of the temple in Jerusalem, it's like saying, you guys, go to hell, basically, to Jewish people, right? This almost triggered Jews to have a major war against Romans because the temple in Jerusalem was the very identity of Jews. Without the temple, their life had no meaning. It's how serious they regarded the Jerusalem temple, the Jews, right? So it was impossible to even think about a statue being in the temple where they believed that God, the Yahweh, dwelled. Okay? So as you can imagine, as you can see, this guy was pretty crazy. What? Okay, this guy. Oh, today everything's... Anyways, this guy was pretty crazy, and the term man of lawlessness, which Paul uses here, fits right in. He had nobody who could stop him, even the laws. That's why, he's called as, man of lawlessness. And although Caligula, this guy got murdered in 41 AD, which was before this letter was written, Paul actually saw someone just like him who was going to come and deceive many people in the future. He's going to persecute many people in the future. And that's why he was telling the Thessalonians to hold on tight, just like how I held on tight on the rail of the ferry, the boat. So let me read verse 9, where Paul describes what this man of lawlessness will do. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie. So, can you guys picture it? Paul is equating the lawless man to Satan. He's basically calling the man of lawlessness who is going to come in the future, calling him a Satan. And the main characteristic of this man would be working in the world to deceive people, just like how Satan does in the world. He's going to create a web of lies around people in our community and then make them believe in the false world that they have already created. That's what he's going to do in the future. And this was the kind of persecution that was coming to the Thessalonians. And it wasn't just simply the physical and emotional persecutions of like poking or, tickling or whatever, It was the persecution of lies. Persecution of confusion, which will eventually push people away from God and His truth. When we hear the word persecution, we just picture those things where we're going to get crucified just like Jesus, and we're going to go through all those physical pains. No, that's not the whole picture. That's just a part of it. But most of the persecutions that we are going to face as Christians in this world is the lies, the persecutions of lies, persecutions of the confusion, and so forth. And I see that so many people in our day, especially the teenagers, they are so confused. Even I'm confused, right? And this is the kind of persecution that we will receive in the days to come. And Paul was warning the Thessalonians that too. I think I shared this with you guys a bit before, but I used to believe in lots and lots of lies that Satan has already planted in this world. When I was a kid, I was gullible enough to believe that men should only cry 3 times in their lives. I tried so hard to keep that, but of course I couldn't. I cried more than 3 times, so I failed. But at the back of my mind, I pushed myself to not cry as much as possible because I'm a man, and men don't cry, which eventually led me to numb all of my emotions, not just sadness, but my happiness, my joy, my excitement, or whatever. Whenever those things happened, I couldn't feel anything. I was like, what am I supposed to feel? And how am I supposed to act? When I'm sad, do I cry or do I just laugh? What do I do? So I was numbing all my emotions because you cannot selectively numb one emotion, right? So as I was numbing my sadness, my sorrow, all my other emotions, which were alongside it, the joy, happiness, everything, got numbed down as well. So I couldn't feel anything. I was an emotionless person. So because of the lie that I believed was truth, I ended up not living a proper human being, as a proper human being who had emotions that God has, given me. What else? Told you many, many times already, but I used to believe that I am worthless, pathetic. Little Asian, chubby little Asian in New Zealand who knows nothing about anything. My head was bigger than, other people, right? Told you, chupa chups, right? I'm working out, so it's not going to happen anymore. But anyways, and I thought I wasn't good at anything, apart from binge eating. So I found no worth in me, and the world seemed to be affirming that by constantly showing me those perfect people in the TV shows and programs. And if I didn't have those attractive attributes, it felt like I had no worth, $0, right? And I believed that people will never love me, and I will die forever alone. So in this competitive world, I believe in the satanic lie, that if I am not competent enough, I will be of no worth. And I'm 100% sure that many of you here are also believing in this lie. If you're not competent enough, if you don't look like me, handsome Pastor Jonathan, you're going to end up being alone, right? If I didn't get high marks at school, then I would be of no worth. If I can't go out with anyone when I'm a teenager, then I would be of no worth. If my jokes are not funny, just like how I am always, then my worth will drop. That's what I thought because of the lies of this world. But was it actually true? No, it's not true. When I met Jesus, when I finally met Jesus, and when the truth came into my heart, the truth of Jesus, the truth of the gospel came into my heart, I began to be set free from constantly numbing my emotions. And I was also set free from thinking that I am worthless. I realized that I am God's precious children. And no matter how messed up my life seemed to be or can be, I eventually discovered that God calls me worthy. Who cares about the world, what the world says? When God, who created this world, said that I'm worthy, then I'm worthy. And when that realization kicked into my heart, I was able to properly handle my thoughts and emotions. I stopped beating myself up, and I stopped hiding my flaws. That's why I can freely share some of my weaknesses with you guys, right? Even though it's a shameful thing, it's an embarrassing thing. I stopped hiding my flaws. Instead, I started to look to God, and I meditated His love whenever I felt insecure about myself. Teenage years are the most insecure times in life. If anyone tells me to, ask me if I want to go back to teenage years, I would say no, because it was horrible for me. It's the most insecure times in life. You're growing, and you're exposed to a lot of new things, especially new changes. And nobody can get everything right at one go, right? We make mistakes, and we learn from them. I know there are many of you who are trapped in the lies that this world is constantly feeding you. It could be the YouTube that you watch, right? It could be your parents who constantly plant those lies in your head. It could be your friends telling you that you are of no worth. But guys, it is time that you break free from it. Believe in the truth that God proclaims. Know that you are the precious children of God, and stop beating yourself up for not being the perfect person in this world, because nobody is. Nobody can be. Even though us broken humans may expect others to be perfect, our God is a gracious God who always prepares a room for you and me, even after we fail. And because of this grace, we can live another day in peace and comfort. So guys, I really want to invite you today to stand firm and hold on tight. And when I say hold on tight, I don't mean it to hold on to the worldly things like money, friends or fame, whatever, Rather, hold on to the truth which will eventually set you free from the lies of this world. And when we constantly meditate on the love of God and think about God's grace for us, we will be able to thin out those lies in the world. So as I close, I want to share these Bible verses with you. John 8:31b to 32. Jesus said, "If you hold to my teachings, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Amen? So if you hold on to Jesus' teachings, then you will come to know the truth, and the truth will eventually set you free from the lies. And I pray that this becomes a reality for all of you who are here today. Let's pray.